Okay, let's finally get this engine mount out of here. This engine mount bracket. That's the water pump. That's one of the tensioner pulleys. Back here is that grenade style tensioner. And to get it loose, to get it out, what I'm gonna, there's one bolt here and one bolt there. I'm gonna loosen the top one and then I'm gonna remove the bottom one. Once I remove the bottom one, it's gonna, because the top one's loose, it's gonna allow the tensioner to pivot downward this way, because the pulley is gonna basically want to come this way. And right now the tensioner pin is actually pressing on the metal housing of this pulley right here. So it'll just pivot downward and we'll be able to relieve the tension that way and get it out. So there I am, just down on that bottom one. So there's that bottom bolt out. And there's the tensioner. There's that pin that sticks out. There are the holes, as I mentioned. You'll compress this pin in and stick like a drill bit down in it or a nail or something. But I got a new one, so I'm tossing it out. Well, let's be real. I'm gonna keep it just in case. Okay, I'm gonna take off the belt here. Just slip it off from the slack side. Come down and actually I'll just take it off from above here, this way, around, just like that. I'm going to inspect the belt here. It actually looks pretty good. Yeah, so we're just replacing it, this time as preventative maintenance, which is pretty much how you should always be replacing your belt anyway. I'm going to take off those two pulleys. They're 14mm bolts, and I need a breaker bar to do it. The engine needs to go back up. I want to point something out on this one here, this pulley. This is actually a sleeve right here that comes out and gets transferred to the new pulley. Now it's time to crack the water pump loose. There are 5 fasteners. Two on that side, 3 on this side. And I'm just going to unscrew the fasteners just a little bit at first. A couple of turns. And then I've got my drain pan positioned right underneath the engine to catch the coolant. Give the water pump a couple taps. Just kind of break it free. Start the coolant dripping. Maybe asking, why am I not draining the coolant from the radiator end? Well, even if I completely drain the radiator, there's still going to be a bunch of coolant left in the engine. And when you go and crack the water pump loose, it's all going to leak out anyway. So you might as well just crack the water pump free and let it drain this way, and let all the coolant that is in the engine drain out and leave whatever's in the radiator in there. That's what I figure. So I'm just doing this little by little. I don't want a whole flood, that's why I didn't take all the bolts off. But I can just let it drain that way. Get it going a little more. Open the radiator cap to maybe, let's let air have a path in to the system. Let it drain a little faster that way. Coolant's pretty much stopped draining at this point. I can feel that the water pump is pretty loose, so I'm going to take it all the way off. There we go. I'm going to lower the engine slightly because it's still up at an tilted up at an angle, and when I lower it, gravity should pull out just a little bit extra coolant, whatever was there. Got the new water pump here, and it's nice. The gasket just kind of, there's these little tabs that kind of hold the gasket in, so I don't really need to worry about messing with RTV or gasket dressing or anything like that. You just want to let the rubber gasket do its thing. Very, very important not to over torque these bolts when we put these in, because you don't want to crush that rubber gasket. That is what will ruin your seal more than anything. I'm just kind of making sure that there's nothing on the surface that I'm about to reseal to. None of the rubber left over from the last water pump, and it looks like there isn't. There are these little locating pins on the water pump. We're going to torque these bolts to 9 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. I'm just going to rinse off the glycol from the engine with some brake cleaner. And really, I'm mostly just rinsing off the pulleys. All right, so here's the old pulley, and there's a little sleeve that it comes with, and that's basically going to go into our new pulley. And we're going to put it back on the engine. And there's the new pulley there. Actually, I'll pull this the dipstick tube out right now, just because easier if it's out of the way for when I go to put the covers on later. Now I'm going to put the timing belt on. Now, before I do this, I just want to point out again that I can confirm that my alignment marks are where they need to be on each pulley. On the number one, at the number 1 position, there's a little mark on the end of the metal pulley right here. It's in line with this tooth, and that lines up with the indent on the back of the shield there. Right here, there's the same thing. There's a little mark right here, indent on the back. So basically it's this tooth that's aligned with that indent. Same thing at the bottom pulley. There's a little tiny arrow. It's easier to see from below, but I'm not going to move the camera right now. Little tiny arrow. This tooth is aligned with this arrow on the actual housing. So the pulleys are all aligned where they need to be, and I can come in here and put the belts on. Now, I'm going to put the belts on the tension side first. The tension sides are this side and basically the top part. The untensioned side are where the idler pulley are. Not the idler pulley, but the tensioner pulley. So I can come around and put the belt on, kind of slip it over. So it's kind of where it needs to be. But when I put the belt on here, I want to make sure that there's as much tension as possible before I slip it over the bottom pulley. And it's kind of easier to do that from below. Basically, I'm pulling down a little bit of tension, not enough to move the pulley up above, but enough to just make sure that it's tight and that I'm not missing a tooth. Come back up here, make sure that that's where I am. And if I'm being honest, I missed a tooth. You can see how there's slack here. And it might be a little easier just to get it on the bottom and then come up here, make sure it's tight, because you're able to sort of pull tension from below from up here. You're able to keep tension on the pulley below and wrap it over here. And so now we're tight there. So I'll come down, wrap underneath the water pump, up and over the the back camshaft pulley. So that's the way I want it. You can see I've got tension there, tension there. It's not all loose. All the looseness is down here. And when we put the tensioner on, it'll put the tension on there. That's how we want it. So always come back and check it, and if it's not tight, tensioned, go step by step until you get it. So I'm going to put the tensioner on. I'm going to cut this zip tie off. I'm going to install it from below, but you can see that. So these bolts also get torqued to 9 foot-pounds. And now I will pull the little clip off and set that tensioner. And there we go. Tension on the belt. Just double confirm that our marks are where they need to be. And the one down there looks good as well. And that's it. Torque these pulleys to 33 foot-pounds. Put our engine mounting bracket back on. Torque these to 33 foot-pounds as well. Now I'm going to put the lower cover back on, but remember this little washer thing goes on first and the beveled side goes in. That's the belt retainer. I'm making sure that this rubber grommet's in the channel. Right there. Basically protects the timing belt from contamination. And we need to slip this thing in from up above. I'm just putting on the 4 lower bolts from underneath here. Not tightening them all the way down yet because it's just a little easier to get all the bolts threaded first and then start tightening things down. Now I can put on the other 3. Well, not easy to get all those in, but they are in. Put the crank pulley back on. I'm not going to put the crank pulley bolt back on yet. I'm going to finish doing the covers up top. Pop on the back cover here. Try to run these down as far as you can, because trust me, the less you have to turn a wrench, the better. There's just not a lot of room to do that. It's easier to turn a deep socket with your fingers here. By the way, I am not torquing these, but if you're interested, it's about 9 pounds. It's really not that necessary, just important not to break the plastic, I think. Now our front cover. And I kind of broke this front plastic piece, but I don't really care. All it does is hold in that little rubber grommet for the engine cover, and this vehicle doesn't have its engine cover installed, which means the owner cares about it about as much as I do. Now we can put the oil dipstick tube back in. A little easier without the actual dipstick in it. That dipstick tube bolt is a little difficult to see. The hole for it, I should say. Not easy. Put this bolt back in here. This one up here. We should be able to put the power steering pump back in there. Let's pull that tensioner up. So we can just get the pump on there a little easier. There. Slip it on kind of like that. Use a deep socket to sort of put the nut on. Let the tensioner back down. So we can leave those things loose for the time being. We want to clean off the crank pulley bolt completely, and we're going to take some engine oil. I'm going to dip my screwdriver in it, and I want to apply oil to the inside surface of the washer here between the bolt head and the washer. Inside there. Turn it around, and then apply some to the threads of the screw as well. Threads of the bolt. So this time the tool is actually going to go, the breaker bar is going to go in front of the suspension, in front of it, instead of over back of the axle, because we want to prevent the crank pulley from turning this way. So it's going to go in like that. Put my ratchet back on here. You can see how it's going to end up turning, and it's going to stop it from moving in that way. I'll give myself a little bit of an extension here. Because I'll be able to pull it up that much higher. Able to start from up here. Just going to press down. Ratchet up if I can, and press down again. And it's very hard to gauge exactly how tight you need to make it. You're really supposed to have a torque wrench, and you need to get this to 181 foot-pounds, but you need a 250 foot-pound range torque wrench to do that, and I only have like a 120. So basically I'm just kind of doing this until I really can't get it to budge anymore, because I remember how tight it was when I was trying to get it off. I'm going to go with that. That feels about tight enough. So now I can add the coolant back in. Slowly. The nice thing is that I know how much I took out, so I know how much needs to go back in. A friend of mine has very graciously lent me his 250-pound torque wrench, and I've got it set to 181 foot-pounds right now. And I'm going to just see how close I came to having this bolt at 181. Looks like we're good. whatever I got it to, it's definitely 181. You know, in fact, I might have gotten it a little tighter than that, so it's okay. I have finally gotten the new belts in, and I'm going to install them. I'm going to install them so that I can read the writing. I just kind of like to do it that way. Do it from below first, so I have room to get it around the pulley. There we go. The tensioner is at 12. That's some good tension on this, but keep in mind the belt is going to stretch slightly, and when you tighten up the bottom screws here, it's also going to tighten a little bit more. You want about that much in the deflection. That's pretty good. I can put the other belt back on. And again, I'm going to assume that this is going to be just a little bit easier from underneath the car. I'm going to raise the engine. Make things as easy as I possibly can. Basically what I'm trying to do is slip underneath that tensioner there and pull it back and then slip over the alternator. Yeah, there we go. Double check that you're on all the pulleys and then release tension. Again, double check. Yeah, looks like I am. Finally. Now we can finally put the motor mount back on. Slip this little cable holder right there. Start all the bolts really carefully before I start screwing them in. Before I start tightening them down fully. Because if you tighten some of them down fully, you'll never be able to get the other ones even threaded correctly in most cases. And these were those tricky ones. Originally I could have taken out this middle bolt right here and just left the actual bracket in place. But that would have left this big mount here, you know, the actual mount itself just in the way basically. So I took it out just to get things out of the way and also to make it easier to see things with the camera. That's just kind of the way I like to roll. So see, ideally this piece of the mount is supposed to be screwed on first, and then you're supposed to come in here and put the second piece down and screw it in here. If the second piece is out of there, then you kind of have clear, easy access to do both of these bolts here. But I was able to get these out without doing that, and I believe I'll be able to get them back in as well. Probably going to use my universal joint as well. If you don't have one of these great universal joints, then that's probably the way you're going to have to do it. So these bolts are 33 foot-pounds. And this one right here is actually 40. I was attempting to actually remove it this way earlier. You didn't see that in at the beginning of the video, but it's still a little loose, so I'm just torquing it. So there. Well, I do believe that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time to start the car and see if it's all good. And it absolutely is. Well, that is going to do it for this job. Main thing really is to check and make sure there are no leaks in the morning. Make sure that the water pump isn't leaking, things like that. Make sure the power steering pump isn't leaking, because we did take the pressure line off up there, and there are O-rings in there. So it's a good idea to make sure that's not leaking either. But other than that, it's all pretty straightforward, and good luck doing this job. It is a big one, but it's doable. Thanks for watching.